For more than 100 days, Khartoum's nights have been lit up, the quiet interrupted by war. Most of the fighting in Sudan's conflict is here in the capital, deserted and damaged. Many citizens have fled, the others are in hiding. People caught between two warring parties in a country the United Nations says is on the cusp of a full-blown civil war. The fear is that this could be a battle of attrition between two factions that were once in government together, but have now taken up arms against each other. The Sudanese army's propaganda proudly portrays its latest recruitment drive. Smiling new soldiers, guns on display, training initiated. On the other side, same guns, same desire to not back down. The Rapid Support Forces, under the command of this man, Mohamed Hamdan Dagalo, also known as Hemeti. In his first appearance on camera since the war began, he offered an apparent apology for the conflict, even as he committed to continue the fighting.
First, I want to apologize to every Sudanese man and woman, old and young, for the tragedies of this terrible war that's been forced upon us by the old regime. Secondly, our message to our brothers in the Sudanese armed forces is this: if you want a quick solution to the war, then there needs to be a change in leadership. Change these leaders.
The RSF controls much of Khartoum, and so as the Sudanese army attempts to push them out, civilians are caught in the middle. Those who are left in the capital either live in fear of their homes being ransacked or becoming a casualty in the crossfire. We spoke to one doctor at a hospital, supported by a Sudanese American group, who said she's even had to treat pregnant women injured in the fighting.
If we collapse the whole healthcare service system will collapse. So we had to work even in the middle of gunfire. We are truly stressed out, and all we hope is for this war to end.
3 million have been displaced since the war began in April, with around 700,000 fleeing to neighbouring countries, like here in Chad. But safety does not equal sanctuary. The rains and the winds have battered this refugee camp, where resources were already scarce.
This is humiliating. My grandmother has nowhere to stay. For God's sake, please provide us with shelter as soon as possible. Everyone here has lost 3 or 4 loved ones, and we all came here with nothing to eat or drink.
Many who have fled are from West Darfur, where the war has given way to attacks by the RSF and Arab militia on civilians. Channel 4 News has gathered eyewitness testimony that points to the mass killing of people from the African Masalit community in several towns. The International Criminal Court is now investigating alleged new war crimes, with the RSF denying it's committed any atrocities. While there are attempts by both Saudi Arabia and Egypt to broker peace, that is a way off and of no hope to those displaced. Where here at this camp, they can spend up to 6 hours queuing for clean water. The wait for peace and for a return to their old homes will be far longer.
Well, earlier I spoke to Radwan Nuyser, the UN's designated expert on human rights in Sudan, and I began by asking him about the challenges of getting aid to the Sudanese people who urgently need it.
Today, nearly 25 million people this is about half of the Sudanese population, are in need of humanitarian assistance and of protection. In Darfur alone, there are 9 million people who need assistance. However, with the deterioration of the security situation, it is becoming extremely difficult to reach the millions of people who need urgent humanitarian assistance. The UN has managed during the last 2 months to reach around 3 million people. But again, the security conditions do not allow safe and effective humanitarian operations. The parties must remind their fighters of their obligation under international law. The looting of a humanitarian assistance is completely senseless. Since the outbreak of the conflict, 40,000 tons of food and other assets have been looted.
The aid that is so desperately needed by millions of people, if you cannot get it to those people, what will happen to them?
There are families, madam, that are surviving on eating leaves. Now, there are babies dying. Malnutrition is widespread among children. There is a severe malnutrition prevailing in Sudan today. There are people who cannot get assistance because they are trapped in their homes with no food, no water, no medicines, no cash, no communication means, and they are unable to access humanitarian assistance, again because of the insecurity.
In our own reports from the region, we are repeatedly hearing, mainly from women whose husbands, brothers, sons are missing or have been killed. We know people are beginning to make parallels with the desperate, horrific violence in Darfur 20 years ago. Do you think those parallels are relevant?
The reports we receive from Darfur, as you rightly said, remind us and echo the horror and devastation 20 years ago. And it is opening up old wounds.
People are beginning to talk about the fact that they believe this is genocidal violence, which is a very complicated, loaded term. How do you characterise what you're seeing?
It may amount to ethnic cleansing. Let me repeat what the prosecutor of the International Criminal Court has said to the UN Security Council. We are, by any analysis, not only on the precipice of a human catastrophe, but in the midst of one. It is occurring.
From the beginning of this conflict, you have been speaking out about violence against women, but the evidence suggests that this is continuing, that rape, sexual violence are being used as a weapon in this war. What is your assessment of that?
It is a reality, unfortunately. And even the Sudanese authorities have recognized there are over 100 cases of sexual violence and allegation of rape. It is really appalling.
Is the outside world, in your view, paying enough attention to what is happening? Is it doing enough?
In my personal view, it is not. In my personal view, it is the duty first of the judicial system in Sudan to bring perpetrators of violence to account. If not, it is the duty of the international community that there is justice in this world. So far, it is not the case.
Radwan Nuisser, thank you very much for talking to us today.
Thank you for inviting me.